Oda has been keeping a secret from us for a very long time. You see, turns out that the Straw Hat crew is not just this random bunch of pirates that Luffy has lucked into like a kid pulling a perfect holographic Charizard on their first ever Pokemon pack. Nope, turns out that this group has been special after all. And we've already confirmed that a bunch of the crew definitely officially have special lineage, so what if actually the entire crew, every single Straw Hat, are exactly like that? I mean, some are the children of royal families, legendary samurai, and the world's most wanted criminals, so why can't others be the descendants of moon robots, or, as in the case of Frankie, the son of a funky father whose genetics make him want to dance around in a Speedo, yelling super all the time? Ugh, man, I gotta say, I personally still kind of hate that possibility, don't you? But let's go and break down every single Straw Hat's potential to have a special lineage. Starting things off with Zoro, who you might know by now is not just some random orphan kid from a village in the East Blue. No, this guy is related to the strongest swordsman ever. Of course, I'm talking about the legendary sword god of Wano, Ryuma, who is Zoro's ancient ancestor. And I don't know about you, but I was personally kind of hoping to dive way deeper into Zoro's lineage during the Wano arc, but that obviously apparently wasn't a priority for Oda somehow, because he just kind of casually lore dropped Zoro's entire family tree in a random question corner in a new volume. And I'm not gonna go into too much detail here, but as you can see, Zoro's grandmother came all the way from Wano, and our green-haired swordsman is the great-nephew of this guy who was the daimyo of Ringo, which is a region in Wano. So clearly, Zoro's got some absolutely busted genetics and royal lineage, which has surely helped him in his quest to become the world's greatest swordsman. Alright, I mean, this wasn't really that big of a surprise. I think we've all known for quite a while that Zoro was probably related to Ryuma. I mean, they're basically clones of each other when we see Ryuma in younger years, so it did always make sense that Zoro is actually Wano royalty, or he used to be, I guess. That's kind of all in the past now, but one Straw Hat who is literally royalty is of course our favorite cook, Sanji. Because as we learned during the Whole Cake Island saga, Sanji is actually from the Vinsmoke family. Yeah, that's right. The famous cloners whose leader is so screwed up he even modified his own kids. Now Sanji, funnily enough, is actually more of a failed experiment really, and lucky for the rest of the family that he got to keep his emotions, because that's really the only reason that he ended up coming back and saving them. But also all of these modifications now explain Sanji's stupidly durable body. What's crazy though is that there is even a chance that Sanji has even more special powers than you might remember. Because during his fight with the funky dinosaur Queen, we were introduced to the idea of Lunarian DNA. Now, Lunarians are this ancient race of fire-wielding, flying angel-type creatures, and their DNA could be the true power source of Sanji's own fire powers as well. Or it could just be really his burning passion of love. You know, maybe we will be learning more about the true power of love in Elbaf. It seems that way, but this is all pretty standard, right? And you might be thinking, well, yeah, we all know about Zoro, we all know about Sanji, but what about the rest of the Straw Hats? Like, why should they be special? What's their special lineage supposed to be? Well, just you wait, because we actually aren't quite done with Kaido's mad scientist here, and I'll be honest, I kind of really hate this idea. Like, hate this idea, but there is a really strong possibility at this point, we gotta be honest, that Queen is actually Frankie's father. Yeah. That's right. The king of funk and the super cyborg might actually be related. Who could have guessed that one, right? I mean, I didn't, but yeah, if you didn't know about this one, then go take a look at Queen's Vivre card information, because it tells us that Queen did have a child when he was around 20 years old, which is precisely 36 years before the current story. And what's even crazier is that we also learned that Queen abandoned this child when they were 10 years old, which, what do you know, fits exactly with the timeline for when Frankie was abandoned by his parents. So yeah, as much as I hate this idea, I suppose it does make a lot of sense that Frankie actually inherited his father's abilities as a scientist, as a builder, and also as a perv, I guess, and Frankie also rebuilt his body into a cyborg, very much like Queen did, so if this whole speculation is true, it kind of follows with children inheriting things from their ancestors, just like Zoro, for example, inherited Ryuma's sword art. But you may be wondering why I hate this idea so much, and it's not really the fact that Queen is Frankie's father, although I do hate that kind of too, but it's more so the idea that if this were actually true, Franky had literally zero interaction during the Wano arc with his father. Kind of like with Zoro, why? Like, why make this a thing if you're then not gonna make it a plot point at all? Like, even a minor one, though. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be that surprised. Wano, again, was supposed to be Zoro's arc, and we didn't get anything about his family as part of the plot either, so if Zoro's lineage got swept under the rug, I guess Franky had no chance either. Though again, Wano was such a long arc with so many little side pockets and so many side stories, why not fit that stuff in somewhere, Oda? But okay, that's my own little grievance with the Wano arc. But that's pretty bad though, right? I mean, both Sanji and Franky might be children of some of the most terrible, disgusting characters in all of One Piece. Kind of hard to top Judge and Queen in terms of toxic fathers, and they both happen to be part of the famous scientist group MATS, so what are you gonna tell me next? That Nami is the daughter of Caesar Clown? Man, no, she would absolutely hate that, I'm pretty sure, but I don't think that's true at all. But unfortunately, Nami's true parents might just be even worse than you could ever have imagined. Let's clean the palette and start with what we actually know for sure about our sassy navigator here, because way back in the story during the Along Park arc, we actually learned that Nami and her sister were rescued from a war-torn island by Belmare, who then raised them as their own daughter. Which you might now be thinking, you know, what's so bad about that? I mean, Belmare is one of the OGs in the story, right? One of the truly good parents that exists in One Piece. But you see, the problem with this is that she isn't actually Nami's mother, so any special lineage that Nami inherited would have had to come from someone else, kind of like was the case with Sanji. And so the million-dollar question here would be, who? And I do just have a question for you, because even after everything we've discussed so far and all the insane family lines that we will discuss coming up here, do you really think that Oda would leave Nami's parents as one of the only true remaining mysteries in the story? I mean, along with Luffy and Zoro, she is one of the true core members of the Straw Hat crew after all. And before we ever learned more about Zoro's and Luffy's parents, we never thought we'd get anything like that. So, do you really think that Nami won't get any crazy reveals whatsoever? I personally kind of can't really see that happening, and maybe that's just because I really want something to happen. Alright, but with that out of the way, let's actually get into some of the ideas here, and there are a couple of crazy theories that have been very popular over the last few years. Like, for a long time, a very common theory throughout the community was that Nami might be a child of Big Mom herself, Charlotte Linlin. The main reason for this was kind of that Nami seemed to have excellent control over Big Mom's Weaver card during the entire Whole Cake Island arc, so maybe there was some family connection that made those powers easier for her to control. Plus, she did become pretty great friends with another two of Big Mom's children, Charlotte Lola and Chiffon, so the idea kind of was there, well, if they were sisters, this would make a lot of sense, maybe, I guess. However, if you don't like this idea, I can, calm your nerves a bit, because most people have at this point moved on from this idea. I mean, new Weaver cards recently confirmed that the island Nami was born on was this war-torn country called the Oikot Kingdom, which is just Tokyo in reverse. And I highly doubt that Big Mom traveled there specifically to give birth to Nami, so I think we can put this theory to bed for good. So, if that's not true, I'm sure you're all wondering, who is it then? Like, who are Nami's legendary royal parents? Well, let me introduce you to the idea that the Nami that we know and love is actually Nerona Nami. That's right, Nerona. Same as, Imu's family name, which sounds crazy, I know. Nami being related to Imu. I'm pretty sure you're thinking there is no chance, but surprisingly, there is some evidence that could actually point to this idea being true. And let's start with the most basic fact that Nami is an absolute master of the weather. Her ability to navigate the seas has kept the Straw Hats alive this long in the first place, and we do know that she has been a navigational prodigy basically ever since she was a kid. And so it makes sense that this ability is something that she might have inherited from her family. So let's take that idea and relate it to Imu. Which, I mean, as we've all heard now a trillion times by a trillion different people, yes, Imu spelled backward is Umi, which means sea or ocean in Japanese. Now, this also ties into the idea that Imu is the sea god or has some sort of sea devil fruit. Plus, do you remember when Imu ordered the destruction of Lulusia? I mean, we had that absolutely crazy panel here of Emu literally crossing an entire island of the map. And so the thought has crossed my mind that E might have some crazy power to actually shape the world using maps, and that would be an insane connection since Nami's dream is to draw a map of the entire world. So that, plus Nami's expertise with the weather, all kind of points to the possibility that she is the child or related to Emu. Crazy, right? Yeah, and I mean, kind of. I mean, I know that's a pretty loose connection here, so let's lay down some more facts that might support this idea. Firstly, in Eket Island, we learned that celestial dragons will sometimes kidnap other people and slaves in order to force them into marriage. And we also know that these kidnapped people and their children, like Bonnie and her mother, are often then abandoned by the celestial dragons back onto some random island. And so when you really think about it, all of this could fit in nicely with the idea that Nami, Nojiko, and possibly their real mother were actually abandoned in the Oikot Kingdom after being cast out by some celestial dragon. Although Nojiko is of course technically not Nami's blood sister, so maybe it was just Nami who was abandoned by the world nobles, or it was just, you know, two different nobles. But then I also want to make the point that Luffy, Zoro, and Nami are the three core essential original Straw Hat members. So doesn't it make sense that all of their lineages will play a significant role in the story? I mean, we've already discussed how Zoro is the descendant of the sword god Ryuma, and of course, Luffy's father is the world's most wanted criminal. Plus, of course, don't worry, I'm of course gonna talk about all the mystery surrounding Luffy's mother towards the end of this video as well, because that's just one of my all-time favorite things to discuss in One Piece in general. But so considering all of this, wouldn't it just make way too much sense that at least one of Nami's parents was actually also a major and important player in the One Piece world? At least it does to me, and it could explain why Oda has waited so long to reveal anything about Nami's mysterious past as well. And then there's of course Usopp, who has about the most straightforward special lineage of them all, because his father is confirmed to be the legendary sniper Yasop, a member and commander of a Yonko crew. Although I do kind of wonder if Usopp has some famous relative from the past, especially if we think about his habit of lying and making up tales, because who else do we know from history that is considered a liar? How about the most famous explorer ever, Nolan? So could he maybe be a long-lost relative of Usopp's family? I could see it. Maybe the whole chestnut gene got mixed up somehow and turned into a long nose. And besides just that though, there is no real mystery with Usopp's parents so far, but it does explain why he has this god tier ability with his slingshot, because his dad is a Yonko commander. I am super curious though, do you think that we will get a father versus son shootout at some point? Like, will Usopp and Yasop throw down for the title of world's greatest sniper? Just like how you can earn the title of world's greatest supporter by signing up to support the channel using the Patreon link in the description below, and by doing that you'll gain access to monthly bonus videos, community discussions, and killer monthly artwork drops, among many other things like early access to our podcasts, and you can gain all of that. And if you're wondering where your dollars go, well, they go directly back into these videos and helping us make all this great artwork, the editors who cut this, like everything. Just help us make better content. So go check it out. But now it's time to get to the wildest lineage idea in this entire video. And I don't think you'll believe what I'm gonna say next, because we're gonna talk about Chopper's special lineage, which gets really crazy. And I'm sure you're saying, like, what? Chopper is a reindeer? What are you even talking about? Is he supposed to be the long descendant of some super clan of reindeers or something like that? The reindeer gods? Well, not exactly, but I do think there is a chance that Chopper is not even a reindeer at all. And look, I'll admit that this idea has the biggest chances of being wrong, but I did find it in the Japanese One Piece community and I loved it, and I still think it's very much fun to discuss. There are some layers to this though, so let's start at the beginning. First of all, we do know that Chopper was very different from his herd because of his blue nose, which right out of the get-go is a really weird thing, right? Like, how does a reindeer get a blue nose? That's probably a question you had when this first happened, but then probably never really thought about it again ever. But as I was researching for this video, me and my team found something really interesting that could explain the off-color nose, because just take a look at Chopper's base form after eating the devil fruit. This is of course the cute small reindeer human hybrid form that we're all so used to. But next, I want you to take a look at these guys right here. These are known as the automata robots that Enel found up on the moon, and don't they kind of look strikingly similar to Chopper's base form here, like small bodies, large roundish heads and faces, the same type of eyes and smile. Like, it just seems eerily similar. So if right about now you're thinking I've gone completely crazy, then honestly you might be right. I mean, Chopper being an ancient robot from the moon, I told you it was gonna be a really wild idea, but it was a Japanese theorist who came up with this, and their theories are pretty good. So there is some more evidence for this, but if that wasn't enough yet for you, listen to this, because there is another idea for Chopper's special lineage, and I'm just gonna throw it out there and let you think about it, but basically, this idea comes from his devil fruit, because pretty much every other human type fruit has ended up being some sort of mythical figure. So wouldn't it maybe make sense that Chopper's has something similar going on? Like, he's obviously not a sun god like Luffy, but how about the forest god mentioned on Skypiea? Could also be related to this ancient god that is mentioned in the Harley text from Elbaf. Just throwing it out there for you, totally not working on a video about that idea specifically right now, but yeah, stay tuned. We're gonna put that out. For now though, let's shift from the youngest Straw Hat to the oldest one. That's right, it's now time to talk about my boy Brook and his family. And honestly, his is pretty much as mysterious as Nami's. I mean, we pretty much only know where he was born, and that's kind of it. But just to cover everything here, currently Brook is actually 90 years old, and we do know that he was born somewhere in the West Blue. So that already basically rules out him being related to any of the major characters we know from the past, including people like Rox, who surprisingly could be related to another Straw Hat we'll discuss next. But even though we don't have any clear leads on Brook's relatives, we can speculate a little bit based on where he was born. Basically, the most important island we know about in the West Blue is the legendary God Valley, where the Rox pirates clashed with the world government and the Roger pirates 38 years ago. So it's actually entirely possible that this might have been where Brook is born. Now, of course, if that were true, then his home island was completely obliterated, and he may not even know about it because he died 52 years ago and then got trapped in the Florian Triangle until the Straw Hats rescued him. Actually, now that I think about it, this would be the perfect way, you know, for the actual history and secrets of God Valley to become relevant in the future if Brook was actually a person born and raised there. Could we get another Brook flashback when we actually do learn what made this island so special? Could be cool. But do you know whose home island was also completely wiped out? That would be Nico Robin, who I know you have all been dying for me to talk about as well. Because we do know that she inherited the will of the scholars of Ohara, and we do know her mother was part of a group of explorers searching for the truth of the Void Century. But that of course leaves the biggest question of all. Who is Robin's father? Because we do know from her mother, Nico Olbia, that supposedly Robin's father was already dead by the time that the Ohara incident took place. But are there actually any other clues that we can use to figure out this mystery man's identity? Let's find out. And just a moment ago, I did mention Roxy Zebek and his relation to a Straw Hat, but I'm actually gonna debunk a theory I've seen for a while that Rox might be Robin's father. And now the reason that this doesn't make any sense at all is pretty much the timelines. I mean, we do know that Robin is 30 years old right now, and we do know that Rox was defeated and, as far as we know, killed during the battle at God Valley 38 years ago. So unless he somehow actually survived and has just been hiding out somewhere pulling a Madara or something, I'm pretty confident we can scratch Rox off the list of potential Robin dads. But don't worry, we're of course not going to stop there though, because all the timelines can't rule out two other prominent figures that do have ties to Rox. The first of which is of course the former Pirate King Goldie Roger. Now we do know that Roger had one child, Ace, after he found Laugh Tale and learned the true history, but it isn't entirely impossible, I think, that he had another child way before that. Because, in case you forgot, when the Wano Samurai Odin came aboard Roger's ship, the Pirate King mentioned that he hadn't spent time with a baby in ages. Now, he could of course have just been referring to Baby Shanks or Baby Buggy here, but keep in mind that this was roughly 25 years before the current timeline, so at this point, Robin would have already been 5 years old. So, is it possible that Roger had a kid with Olbia years before his final journey, and when Roger died, she went out to sea to explore more of the true history? I mean, Honestly, at this point, it is entirely possible to me that Roger could have been Robin's father. But if you've watched the channel recently, you will know that I think that this is not the only option, because there's yet another father figure that is famous at this point for leaving children behind. I'm of course talking about none other than the boy Monkey D. Dragon. Now, there's a little bit of mental gymnastics that we're gonna have to go through here for Dragon to potentially make sense, because we do know that 25 years ago he formed his Freedom Fighters, and sometime before that we do know that he was a Marine. And so it is theoretically possible that he met Albia somewhere in that time period and Robin might have actually been born. And funnily enough, there is an even stronger connection here than you may have realized, because remember that Dragon only formed the Revolutionary Army after seeing the ruins of Ohara and coming there to pay his tribute. And him losing a kid and a lover with Albia on Ohara could really have added to his hatred of the Celestial Dragons. And if Dragon was Robin's father, it could also explain why he took her in during the time skip. He even said that he was looking for her for a long time. However, we can't really ignore that Albia said that Robin's father was dead, so we kind of had to assume that that was a lie for Dragon to be a possibility here, which again is not impossible. And I do personally really like the idea that Robin and Luffy are half siblings with different mothers, and you know, Luffy kind of finding his older sister and rescuing her. So I'm not ruling out the idea quite yet, but it does have its rough edges that I'm not 100% convinced will actually come true. But now it's time to discuss the most powerful lineage on the Straw Hat crew. Let's talk about Jinbei, the King of the Whales. What do you think? Do you like the new title that I gave him there? Because King of the Whales kind of has a nice ring to it, right? Ocelot would probably agree, and it could be super important for the future of the story, given what we just learned from the ancient mural in Elbaf. But before we get to that point, let's just lay out a little bit of groundwork for Jinbei here. For starters, we don't know anything about his parents. I mean, he doesn't seem to be related to any of the fishmen that we know, and with how fisherman genetics seem to work, it's not like we can just look for other whale shark fishmen either. That being said, there is a theory that he might be the son of Sunbel here from the Roger Pirates, but that's mostly just because they're both strong fishermen who were on important pirate crews, and that's kind of where that entire theory pretty much ends. So we don't really know about his parents, but what I do want to talk about is Jinbei's special powers and how they relate to the final war of the story. Because take a look at this thing right here. Did you notice this person right here riding the whale? And notice how they are very clearly separate from the Poseidon figure controlling the Sea Kings down here. So who is this person with the whale and what are their powers? And to me, this could very well be the ancient ancestor of Jinbei, who also has powers to communicate with and command whales. There's also rain here in this mural right above the whale, and we do know Jinbei can control water to some incredible extent, so all of this could point to the theory that Jinbei might be the descendant of a very important figure during Joy Boy's war during the Void Century. And then if we wanted to combine it with the theory that Pluton is actually a whale, then we got ourselves a very interesting future timeline for Jinbei right here. But with that being said, let's now go to the big daddy of them all as we move on to Luffy's lineage, which is both very famous and at the same time completely mysterious. Now, of course, we all do know about his notorious father, Monkey D. Dragon, and his legendary epic grandpa Garp, but there's obviously one very important missing piece here. The big question we all love to ask: who is Luffy's mother? And well, the answer is obvious. It's Crocodile, of course, but all jokes aside, even though I love this theory, there are a ton of theories that we can go through here. First, since Dragon was once a Marine who later left and then declared war on the world government, there are some theories that Luffy's mother might have been a world noble who Dragon fell in love with. Then the theory goes that something happened to her, maybe she was killed, and this is what forced Dragon to leave the Marines. However, the timelines don't really match up well here, because we do know Dragon left the Marines at least 25 years ago, which was well before Luffy was ever born. So clearly, whoever Luffy's mother really is, she has to be someone who Dragon knew after he had already started to hate the world nobles. Now, does that mean she could just straight up be a Revolutionary Army member? It could absolutely be the case. But to me, it would be a little bit of a letdown, I think, if she's just some random woman that we won't learn any more about. So let's instead make this a little bit spicier by bringing back our boy Roxy Zebek here, because for a long time, I've kind of believed in the theory that not only is Luffy the grandson of Garp, but he could also be the grandson of Rox as well. Now, of course, we don't know if Rox had a daughter, but if he did, then she becomes my personal #1 candidate for the identity of Luffy's mother. So who knows, maybe Garp even adopted her after Rox was killed, just like he took in the son of his other famous rival too. That then could explain how Dragon and Rox's daughter met and why she has been kept secret all this time. Plus, I kind of like the idea that Roger specifically thought that only a child with 2 parents who were both part of the D-Clan could become the next Joy Boy and change the world, so it would make sense if Luffy's mother was also a D. And then there's also the possibility of a completely reversed scenario though, where Dragon is actually the child of Rox instead. I mean, I do know that Garp recently in the manga referred to Dragon as his son, but that could be more of a symbolic thing where Garp calls him his son when he's actually his son-in-law. Now, of course, that would mean that Garp has a daughter who is Luffy's mother, but honestly, at this point, we have no clear idea who she could be or what might have happened to her. There are some other pretty cool options, and actually, I just thought of something absolutely crazy. Can you imagine if Luffy's mother is actually a descendant of Joy Boy himself? Like, that would be insane, and it would certainly fit with the idea of his special lineage, but if that were to be true, then I can imagine we can learn all about it once the Straw Hats actually reach Laugh Tale and find the One Piece. A complete Luffy lore family background reveal thing. I mean, if that's the case, sign me up for that, please. 1 ticket, but that does once again bring up another question. What is the One Piece? And how will whoever finds it actually use it? Could Blackbeard use it to conquer the entire world? Or would Shanks use it to fulfill Roger's dream? Or would Shanks try to destroy the One Piece? What in the world would Buggy, Mihawk, and Crocodile do with it if Crossguild reaches it first? I really tried to figure out all of that and more, and if you want to know the answer, you can check out that video right here where I talk about what all the Yonko and some other candidates, you know, chasing after the One Piece would actually do with it. Otherwise though, as always, thanks so much for watching, and thanks to all of the fantastic Patreon supporters you see right here. Your name could be right here. Go check it out if you haven't yet. You guys are all really awesome, and I will hopefully see you in the next video. All right.